Well, thank y'all so much for getting started. For being patient. We're gonna get started now. So all the panelists here are gonna give an intro for themselves. So if y'all could please say your name, your pronouns, a role you have in the climate movement, and a time you felt safe or a time you felt powerful, or like where you felt like you belonged right where you are, that would be great to get us started. Anyone can start off. Or to make it,
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Magdalena. I'm so happy to be here. I use she/her pronouns, and when I thought of this question, something that came up for me was when me and my friend Omari, who's also on the panel today, were at a die-in in front of a board meeting, and we were just both hanging out together, and I felt really empowered at that time. So that's what I would say.
Hi, my name is Romari. I'm 14 years old. I use he/him pronouns. Sorry, what was the question? How you felt like you were in your own power? Well, a time I feel like I was in my own power is just when I started helping around. When I started helping around my neighborhood, a few of my elderly neighbors, they don't have anybody to help look after them. So usually I will come by, help cook them meals, and help just take care of them on some days, so out of the week.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisbeth Ibarra. My pronouns are her. And a time that I felt powerful or like I was in power while organizing is typically when I'm doing organizing work that's in my community of Richmond, California, because I live here in Richmond and face a lot of environmental racism. So recently I've been doing a lot of organizing and getting more people from my school who never thought they would be activists or organizers involved. And that just makes me feel really powerful and great.
My name is Anaya Butler. I use she/her pronouns. I'm from Oakland and live in Oakland, also Alona territory. And 15. A time that I felt powerful was probably when I had like two moments, but like recently I performed, and I don't know, I'm a poet, so I would read spoken word, and it was just like a really sort of empowering experience for me because like I haven't performed in a long time. So that was really powerful. And then YVA recently had an action, and we were outside of the federal building and we did a die-in, and that was really powerful because all these youth were just laying on the ground, sort of making themselves vulnerable, and just to see that and to lead that was an amazing experience. Yeah, thank y'all for having me.
Hi everyone, my name is Carolyn. I'm an adult supporter with YVA and the program's director. And I can't remember if I said that. A time that I remember just a time I remember feeling powerful and centered in myself was when in March of 2019 it was the first YVA climate strike. And we were originally thinking that we wanted to have like at least 100 young people come out, and we ended up having a couple thousand. And I remember we were planning to walk on the sidewalk, and then we came around the corner on Street. We were coming into Market Street, and it was just obvious there was no way we could stay on the sidewalk, and so the youth just like filled the street. And I remember like hugging some of the other adult supporters that were there, and just seeing like, okay, like this is it, like the youth are doing this, and like they're taking Market Street, and it was just a really powerful moment. So I think Hannah was going to speak to this. I can speak to it a little, and unfortunately isn't quite here yet. But about why is it important to be to start with being centered, and to start with when do you feel powerful and safe, because that feeling is systemically robbed from certain communities on a regular basis. And I think you actually spoke to this. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Like, why is it important to start by feeling in your own power? Like, why do you think that's an important place to start?
Well, I feel like that's an important place to start because you try to empower other people around you. You need to start finding the power within yourself to get yourself moving. Because without the power in yourself, you can't afford to keep on pushing people, and afford to let other people come into their own power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess since Hannah isn't here, who was going to ask this question and speak to, does anyone else on the panel want to talk about like why does it feel important to start before you're talking about like reaching out and making bridges with others? Why is it first important to find your own like sense of centeredness and your own sense of power? Does anyone want to speak to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Before we move on to that, Hannah said she's here. She's waiting for approval to join.
Yay! Hannah's here.
Someone can add on to that if they want. Well,
Hannah Bonanza.
Okay. You guys, Hannah was worth the wait. Hey, Hannah! Okay.
Everyone, sorry I'm late. Technical difficulties.
Okay.
Let me get bad traffic.
We asked your question, Hannah. Do you want to answer your own that question about well, introduce yourself and say a time that you felt in your own power and in your own center?
Yeah, my name is Hannah Estrada. I use she, her pronouns. And I am the education and organizing coordinator with Youth versus Apocalypse. And man, there have been a lot of times I think while organizing, I felt powerful. I think the first time I can remember feeling powerful was on BART on my way home from Carolyn's house a few days after the Dianne Feinstein spectacle happened, and we had shot like a documentary, and I was like 15 on my way home from BART, passing through West Oakland, listening to my music and just feeling like, wow, like we're doing something and people are watching us and they're listening to us, even if it's not the politician we want to listen to us. It's a lot of people on the media and the internet that are paying attention and are going, no, this is important that we respect and listen to our young people. And that made me feel super powerful. Even if I wasn't like the main person up there, just being a part of it and seeing my fellow peers do some of the things that they were doing made me feel powerful.
Cool. And Hannah, just to catch you up, Ramari shared a little bit about why he feels like starting before you start reaching out to others, it's important to be centered in yourself. Do you want to speak at all to this? And I was also talking about just like, you know, that safety, that being safe and being in your center systemically taken away from people. So why is it important to find that center when you're organizing? Do you want to speak to that at all before we go into our next question?
Yeah. Real quickly, I think it's so important to have a good understanding of who you are and where you come from and what's important to you, and what position you play, what role you play. Because sometimes when you step into the situations where you have to build a bridge, or there's a bridge that's partially been built and now you have to finish building it, it's important to understand where you're coming from and who you represent and who you can speak for and who you can't speak for. And you know, whether or not you need to step back or whether or not you need to push to the front. I think it's really important. And to speak to what you were saying of systemically that's taken away from us, I think, you know, that's also a part of why it's so important to know like who you represent and what communities you represent and what background you represent, because it's just important that we're thinking about those different perspectives and maybe bias when we're stepping into some of these situations. And you know, you got to know who you are kind of to know where you're going, and to know how you're going to get there. So it's definitely really important in my.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add on to this, or should we go into our first video?
I feel like we should jump into the video.
All right, let's go into our video. So we're going to do our next level of technology here. So here we go. YouTube video. We're going to be a YouTube video. Can you do that? Okay. Let's see.
And
Rising when the money be helping people in need, not feeding the pigs. Don't think I forgot about the governor.
Technical difficulty.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, but just for a little context, that video was when a few members of YVA, along with other individuals and amazing groups, talked to Senator Feinstein about passing the Green New Deal. And as you can see, the energy returned back to youth was not the energy that we needed. Okay, Carolyn's back.
Okay, yep, but you're doing great. I don't know why
I was just literally talking about how
It's like we could everything. We just like on the like you guys just couldn't hear us.
Yeah. But go ahead. What you're saying is all good.
yeah. So I want to finish the video?
Did the video stop? Did you guys watch the video?
It just yeah, we watched it up until the point where Feinstein was telling I don't know her name, but she was just like, well, you should run for senator one day.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
You guys watched it.
Okay. We thought she left.
It's like, okay, I will.
End of the video. My computer keeps freezing, so I think out of it right now with this whole video sharing and also being on this hop-in. But in any case, you were doing great, and you should just. I think actually, Magdalena, who's in that video, was going to ask a question related to that video. But thank you for that framing, Anaya.
So, what potentially invisible to some risks you or your peers face, or gaps do you have, or your peers bridge to get into a conversation? So, like, what do you all have to overcome to even be in a conversation? Like, for personally, like, how do you get there and how do you be there fully?
Yeah, and just to add on to what you're saying, that really comes into play in that video. So I think like kind of around like I think what made you want to ask that question, and we're like there's so many power differences happening in the video. So what are some of those power differences that young people have to bridge to even be in a conversation like that with like a senator or something like that? Am I what you're saying, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Does anyone want to speak to that? Like, I think, it's not always, if we're on this end of a power differential, the system is designed to blind us to it. So for example, for me, when I'm relating to all of you, I'm not naturally obviously going to even see the differences that you guys have to bridge in talking to me because I'm an adult. You know what I mean? Like oppression is designed to blind us to those power differences. So in that video, Dianne Feinstein didn't necessarily even notice or think about all the differences, all the bridging that y'all had to do, all the ways to leave your comfort zones and take risks just to even be in that conversation. So to speak to that, like in those kind of power holder moments, like what are some of the bridges that y'all have to cross or risks that y'all have to take or others that you see in your community that you have to take in those conversations?
I can add on first, but I feel like you mentioning like those differences that like Dianne Feinstein probably didn't even notice during the video. Like, I feel like there's just a lot that came to mind, but like seeing like young people there at her office during the day makes me think about how many people that were there that were skipping school and how many people that were there that came from other places that are far away. And then not only that, but it was like young people talking to someone older, and instead of listening to what we need or listening to, it's not even what we want, it's literally what we need so we can have a livable future, she tells youth, why don't you run instead for senator in the future? But at the same time, she's taking our future away. So it just kind of makes me wonder, like, what future are you talking about? Like, when am I going to run? Is that time ever going to come if you're not taking the immediate action that we need? But like when it comes to bridges to like those bridges for even being able to be in that conversation, there's a lot of other people that probably could have spoken to why we need a Green New Deal. A lot of other people whose parents probably don't even know like why it's so important to skip school and talk about this. Like probably children and immigrants. I know my parents don't let me skip school like to go have a conversation like that, especially like our senator isn't even going to listen to us. So I feel like there's just a lot of bridges there that she didn't look at all.
I can have on next, but yeah, I agree with Lisbeth. I also think, just add on to what she was saying, like, I think just having youth talk to an adult or multiple adults is like building a bridge itself, because you sort of like, you know, of course with age comes experience. And so sometimes like I like from what I've experienced, sometimes adults can like, well, I've been doing this for however many years, so of course I'm gonna know more, and they automatically use that response when talking to youth to sort of like say that, you know, whatever youth are saying is wrong, or it's not, it shouldn't be listened to and stuff like that. And so I think that's something that we witnessed when watching that video. Sort of, you know, when Feinstein was saying, well, I've been doing this for 30 years and I know what I'm doing, and how long have you been doing this for? You're a bunch of youth. But that's not the energy, you know, that we need. It's not about, you know, how long you've been doing it for. It's, you know, what can you do? You know, you're in office, so what can you do going forward? And so I think that's a bridge building itself. I also think, you know, what Elizabeth was saying, a huge thing is like actually getting to Feinstein's office. I know some of the youth in that video, and none of them lived in San Francisco. So like even getting to San Francisco and getting to the office and like talking to however many people they need to talk to even talk to Feinstein, which is a really big deal, was, you know, building bridges itself too. So really just like youth putting themselves out there and adults putting themselves out there, because like you're also talking to, you know, an elected official, which can be a very scary and vulnerable and risky thing. But you know, you're putting yourself out there and you're being brave for, you know, crises like this. But yeah.
To add to that, I think another issue that we kind of face in Bridge we have to build through is the narrative in the media that comes after a situation like that. I remember people on Twitter talking about the adults pulled these kids out of school and forced them to go up there and forced them to say these things, and that all the kids were brainwashed into like socialism or communism or like some type of ism and some type of like political party, and basically just discrediting what young people had did that day, which was, you know, they had a solid understanding of a piece of legislation that was really important, and they went up there and they pushed for it because they knew it was important. And a lot of adults came in and media outlets came in and said, no, this is adults picking out kids from school and placing them in a senator's office for their own agenda. And that narrative was a really weird one that came out. And I think that can sometimes happen a lot with things that young people do. Like when we have mass actions for issues, it's really easy for media to come in and make it about something that it's not. Make it about missing school, make it about like, I don't even know. They have a way of portraying things that distracts people from what we're really doing. Like that whole conversation of, is this adults setting up young people? Are they being used as pawns in an agenda for a certain party in an election? It's a distraction from what we're actually trying to do, which is ask for basic human decency and basic rights to things like clean air and clean water. And I noticed that for young people, they do this a lot. They call us sensitive. They say, you know, we get mad about everything. We're trying to be too politically correct when we're just asking for basic human decency. And because we're young, they get away with a lot of it. They get away with telling us that we're sensitive and trying to tell us that we don't understand and that we're brainwashed. When every single young person in that video had read the Green New Deal themselves and had highlighted it and annotated it and read her version of it and had an understanding of what was going on. And I feel like that narrative of we don't get it was really used against us and is still used against us, and trying to figure out how can we build bridges so that we don't have to go through that patch of everyone thinks that we're being brainwashed as young people is confusing and difficult. So yeah.
I also want to add on, like, about that. I feel like people don't get why we're doing it. We're doing it because communities are being, like, hurt. We're doing it because we just want a good future. And I feel like people, like, yeah, brainwash us, say we're being brainwashed. And I really want people to get the urgency.
Sorry, I got kicked out. My whole thing froze and I had to restart my computer. But I don't know if you guys covered this in the chat about how can adults best support youth to be brave and speak up in those spaces. And as an adult, I have an answer to that question, or I have a take on it, but I don't know if you guys have already discussed that question? Well, I'll start by saying my take, and then you guys can say. I don't really think that the issue is a lack on the part of young people, or that that young people need support with being brave. I think young people just literally need resources and barriers. Adults, and particularly, and also our systems of like white supremacy and classism and racism. Those systems create barriers. So youth brave as anyone could ever hope a person to be. You could be as dedicated as any human can be. And they're railing against something that is designed to be really hard to overcome. So I would say, I don't think in my experience, youth don't need support with being braver. They need those barriers to be broken down. And whether that's through working with young people or it's just through breaking down the barriers from whatever position you're in, I think that's what I see is not a lack of bravery or resolve on the part of young people. But I don't know if you guys have other answers to that question that's in the chat, and then we can also continue with other questions. Do you guys have anything else you want to add to that question that's in the chat?
Just want to echo what you said. It's not, I don't think like it's necessarily like helping youth be brave. I think a lot of youth are already brave and have that courage. I think it's more so allowing youth that space to express themselves how they want to and just, do what we do. And that's like what literally Carolyn does. Like, it's not really, saying, okay, this is how you do this, you got to do this, and like sort of like directing youth. Sorry, my dog. It's more so just really like giving youth the space and opportunity to be able to like, express what they need to say.
I also want to add on because I feel like a lot of the times, like adults, not because it's their fault, but because of like this world of capitalism that we live in, like are so consumed. Well, not consumed, but it's like they're so focused on like surviving and like work, especially like if you're like low income person of color, like that's your priority. So I feel like a lot of times those adults don't really realize that what they should be doing is also like helping youth in whatever way they can, or not only like low income Black, Indigenous people of color, but really like all adults, because like youth still haven't necessarily, not all youth are, unfortunately, like some are, but not all youth are at the point where it's like their main focus is like working 9 to 5 every day, and like this and that. It's like they can still imagine a world where we do get clean air and clean water and have access to food and all of those things. So I think you have to, as an adult, like do the work to also help youth like continue imagining and help those like imaginations like actually like come true, because they're not like adults yet. Anna, you want to know?
Yeah. I do want to say that if you're an adult, it's super, super, super important, bringing it back to our first question, to know what your position is when you're stepping into a certain place, and what power structure that holds. Because, for us, we're all organizers on this webinar, if you will. And so we're all, I feel like, pretty much used to being brave and standing up and being loud and not being afraid to. But for myself, I know there was a time where when I stepped into a meeting and it was all adults and they were all white, I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be heard. And it's taken a lot to come out that shell. And I think it's important to understand that the young people that you're working with, because they might already be young people who are brave and don't need support, but there also might be young people in there that are waiting for you to step back to make room for them. that are waiting for you to be like, hey, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do you think? And I think that's important as well. Of every situation might be different, but it's really important to know who you are coming into it and how that can come into play with some of those other young people, because you're going to have a mix most of the time. There are going to be kids in there who aren't afraid to say anything, and there are going to be kids in there who don't want to be seen. And especially as young brown kids, as young women, we are often forced into that role of like, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be heard, I don't want to move the wrong way because I feel like the other. And so it's important that you know who you are going into that, because if you're like, a teacher or an uncle and an auntie, and you're working with young kids and they might see you one way and you might think they see you another. And so again, whenever you're stepping into like a supportive role for young people, know your position, know your background, know what power you may hold over that person that you think that you don't, but in their head you might. And that's really important. And also just asking people, just asking kids like, hey, how can I further support you in this? Would you like to do this? If yes, is there a way I can support you? And that always helps. Kids aren't going to be like, they're most of the time they're just going to be like, yeah, you could do X, Y, and Z. So I think always just talking to them is a great way to support.
Yeah, like I think just to add on to what y'all are saying, like I feel like that's why I was curious about that question about what power dynamics might be there and be invisible, because classroom who doesn't want to talk, like how brave do they have to be to even be there? Like how brave do they have to be to even show up at school if their family is facing incarceration, deportation, other forms of violence that our society inflicts? You know what I mean? Like people's braveness it's invisibilized because our system wants to pretend that they doesn't want to minimize the risk that they're taking in their everyday life. And I see you nodding, Renmari. Do you want to speak to that at all, or do you want me to keep?
I just agree with what you're saying, because that is like the reality of it.
Yeah. Like it can be frustrating when I've seen frustration. I've worked with young people in OUSD for like 20 years, and I see like when somebody comes into a classroom, like kind of what you were saying, if you're not aware of the presence that you're bringing in that classroom, a lot of times what needs to happen in terms of support is actual material support. A lot of what I do is like bring food to lunchtime meetings. You know what I mean? Make sure that food is available, because if people are needing to stand in line to get their free lunch at lunch, they can't be organizing at lunchtime. They might need a ride to get from here to there because it's not safe for them to go through their neighborhood by themselves. You know what I mean? Like I think it is stepping back, but I think it's also recognizing that the deficiency isn't within the child or the young person. The deficiency is in the system. So to actually create a landscape where young people can be who they want to be and say what they want to say, it's tearing down all these barriers that are put in their way, that they are tearing down every day, and they might not be recognized for that. And it's not just race and class. It's like schools are not necessarily set up to encourage young people to speak their minds. So just by raising their hand, they're taking a risk. You know what I mean? So I generally don't walk into a situation and be like, I'm going to ask each person to meet me 50-50. That might be equal, but it's not justice. Because what does someone have to do to even get into that conversation is a whole lot. You know what I mean? So I'm going to try to meet someone. If I know that I'm coming in from a whole lot more privilege, I'm going to try to do all those tearing down things that I can do, because they've done a million tearing down things that aren't even seen. You know what I mean? That aren't even recognized. And that's all young people, just on the basis of being young. But especially if it's frontline young people that are dealing with all kinds of violence in the back of their lives. You want to add on to that at all?
Yeah. Well, as a youth of color, I can agree that almost every day that I'm trying to make sure that I stay safe and that my family stays safe, I'm constantly breaking down walls and breaking down barriers that are standing in my way, that are stopping my goals. Like for instance, a lot of youth in my area are not focused on going to college. Constantly been them to be on board with me the track to go to college. So like it's hard to constantly try to break down barriers but for other people, and to break down the barriers that are within my family, because like I'm gonna be one of the only 3 people in my family to ever attend college, including my mother and my father.
Cool. All right, there's a lot to say on this question. I don't know if other people want to. Do you guys want to add on anything else, or it kind of goes into the question you were going to ask next, Anaya. Do you want to go into that?
Can I just one thing real quick? I'm gonna make it super brief. I just wanted to say for the adults that are working with people already or are about to, the only thing I want to say is when those young people turn 18, they don't suddenly become grown adults who make 10 times more than they grew up with. Like they don't stop being poor and they don't stop being frontline and they don't stop being black or brown or indigenous. And those resources are just as needed when we turn 18. And I've seen that a lot where sometimes when we turn 18, we kind of get thrown away. There are a lot of programs that are closed to us. And if you don't go to college, you get cut off from a lot of resources. And I want to say it's just as important for you to support those young 12, 16, 15-year-olds as it is for you to support the 18, 19-year-old that's still trying to organize or trying to find their way in the movement or just in life in general. Like we still need those resources. So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, so given like all those power differences that we all experience some way, or just living through in general, for the panelists, how do these background power differences affect your understanding of the climate crisis or your work on climate justice?
Can I start? So as a white person, like I don't understand, like I don't experience like an ounce of what most of y'all go through. And so I feel like sometimes I'm like, in the climate justice movement, I feel like we have to center frontline communities of color, because if you don't, you're not really part of the climate justice movement. You're not here for the purpose. You're not here for the what's going on. You're not here for what we're doing. And because it's not about just building solar panels, it's about having community actually be able to like use them and feel good about what's going on. So I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
I think for me, like, I guess I wasn't. Oh, okay, sorry, like froze, but then came back. I didn't feel connected to the climate justice movement when I first learned about climate change, like at all. It was from like what I've seen about it and from what I've learned about it, it was sort of like brought to me as this white led thing, and like, it wasn't a space for people of color in the communities that I identify with to be a part of. Because before, becoming a climate justice organizer, a lot of the work that I did was focused on Black and brown communities, like the school prison pipeline, and the incarceration system, all this other stuff. And so I felt like that did not connect to climate change whatsoever. And so I, of course, did not gravitate to that. But when I met with YVA and sort of like learned more about us, I started to connect to it because I realized like it's about looking at the root of things and seeing how all of these different, injustices started and how all these issues started. They all started from these systems of, thinking that people are disposable, profiting over life, and, capitalism, and just really like destroying our environment. And so all of these systems, all of this money that's coming from people literally dying are the same systems that, are fueling police, same systems that are fueling like, what in the world? Okay, can y'all still hear me? Okay, sorry, I just cannot see y'all, but okay, now I can see y'all. Sorry, y'all. This is another barrier, but yeah, I think that sort of learning about all of that, how all these things connect, really allowed a space for me to see like this is a movement that is not only fighting to sort of stop and reverse the climate crisis, but also fighting for a world where we can like rebuild it, and rebuild it for a space where everyone is allowed to thrive and where these systems no longer sort of blind us to the different oppressive systems that we face. So really just bettering ourselves as humans, but like also our habits and unlearning things and learning things. So really just a space to dismantle the system as a whole so we can build a new one that is sort of built off of equity, sustainability, and just, honesty and respect.
I want to add on to what Anaya was saying about like all of these different systems, of oppression. I feel like there's so many, and they come in like very clear examples. Like for example, like I just want to talk a little bit about my community of Richmond and the Chevron refinery that we have, like super close to us, literally in our backyards. And I feel like that's exactly like one of the systems of oppression that Anaya was talking about. And it makes us like kind of make the refinery has made us feel like we have like they have like a chokehold on us. I don't know if that's like the right term, but basically like the fact that we have a refinery in a community of primarily low income people of color, and the fact that we have higher rates of cancer and asthma. But and then Chevron sponsors some of our college scholarships. Chevron sponsors our newspaper. Chevron, Chevron funds like STEM programs in our community, and makes us think that we need them for like our taxes and things like that. If not, we're going to be left in debt. I feel like that's just one example of like this system of oppression that's like making us feel like we need them and like we won't survive without it. And I also think that's why sometimes it's really hard for people in my community to learn about and do climate justice work. I know for a long time, like would see this refinery every day driving home, but I didn't know that it was a bad thing. I didn't know that the smoke coming out of the air was bad for me. I mean, the smoke coming out of the factory was bad for me, and none of that. I just knew that Chevron helped my siblings pay for college, and I know that Chevron has like a bunch of different programs here in Richmond. So it's just like I feel like that's just one example. Speaking on how like all of these like all of these bridges are connected to like how I'm connected to climate justice and my identity.
Cool. I'm not sure if Aniya's there, but does anyone else want to add on to that question about like kind of like how these different systems affect your understanding of the climate crisis or climate justice? If not, I know Amari has another question.
Yeah. Okay, so given the divisions and the struggles that we go through, when has there been a time where you've made a connection that felt like super good to you and made you feel really powerful? Or when has there been a time where you did not want to make a connection with a connection at all?
Hannah, do you want to talk about the time with the people across the way?
So at one of our most recent strikes, I think it was the first strike after the pandemic. We were going to City Hall in San Francisco, and while we're marching, we get word that there is a group of protesters, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, who are protesting out in the space we're supposed to be headed to. So we wait a minute, and then we head over there, and we're across the street from them, literally, like they're on one side of the street and we are on the other. And immediately when we get there, they start coming over to bother us and to yell at us. I know Magdalena had an encounter with one of them where they were trying to take her paint. And they were yelling at us, cussing us out, young people. I was megaphoning people in the face because they were getting too close to me. But our young people everyone was so heated that we could not stop engaging. And we couldn't get our young people to face City Hall instead of facing them. And we knew we weren't going to be able to get them to leave us alone. And of course, the police were just sitting there watching 10-year-olds get cussed out. So we tried to do a chant, and I think that made it even more heated. Eventually, I went up and I took the mic and I asked everyone to put their fists in the air and face me and be silent, and it worked. And weirdly, all of the group of young people turned around with their fists in the air, and we stayed silent for a moment, and then we were able to continue with our program. But that made me feel powerful. But I also think, in a way, that is a time I decided to not build a bridge, because I think someone might have decided, oh, let me go talk to that group of people and try to reason with them. And sometimes with big groups like that, there is no reasoning. And so, even though I didn't build a bridge with them, I think we built bridges with our fellow young people, and we kind of made a collective decision to stay in this space and not engage further with them.
Now, I'm really sorry you guys have to go through that, and I'm really upset that I wasn't able to be there for that. Because if I was there, that'd deal with me. And I know y'all know how I get when they come for one of mine. But I want to add on to that because I think this is around the second climate strike, the one before COVID. So me and Carolyn had got there early, and a bunch of people already started showing up, and we started getting a little overwhelmed because we weren't ready to start just yet, and we're still setting up. And then a bunch of different people started showing up, and then these people started coming around and started handing out these flyers, and they kept saying, green capitalism is still capitalism. The Green New Deal won't save you. And I could just like feel myself getting so heated, and I almost broke that barrier between rage fueled monster and Captain Cuddles. And I was not trying to break that barrier because because through anything, I always try to stay non-violent, and I always try to remain the peaceful, loving person that all my friends know and love. But there is a certain point. There is never let anybody cross, and that's when you start to come for what I believe in, or start to come for any of my friends who are here trying to support each other.
So what was the time when, to ask you your own question, like what was the time when you did make a connection that wasn't like automatic? It doesn't have to be like with someone who was like trying to attack your very right to exist, but like what connections have you made as a climate activist? Because I know you've been involved in this for a long time.
Well, I would say most of the people in this meeting today. I met Hannah at my actually second climate strike. That's when we became homies. And in Magdalena, we met actually at it was my first counselor's board meeting, and I was like, oh, yo, I was like super starstruck. And then Lisbeth, I actually have only seen Lisbeth through Zoom and at like one action.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of bridging that happens within YVA. It's like a it's
So
like
I would say that all the connections that I've made, friends, family, and homies through YVA, they all make me feel really powerful because they're all part of my support group.
how do you guys think that in this kind of related to your question, but how do you guys feel like in YVA? Because we're not all the same. Like we're all from, I think like literally honestly, except for me and Anaya who are neighbors, but mostly we're all from different places. Many of us are different ages, whether middle school, high school, or adult parents, different races. There's probably range of economic backgrounds. Like how do we in YVA build bridges even within YVA so that it does feel like a safe and supportive community? What do you guys feel about that? Yes, Hannah?
I think we have a lot of really honest conversations about what we're doing and what we're feeling and how we could go about things better. I think bringing things out into the open and trying your best to make it, sorry, construction, to make it, you know what? Yep, open conversation.
I also think, like, I know in the past, like, people are like, how do I show up for, this is just like kind of off topic, but like, how do I show up for young people as an adult or like as an elder? And I feel like you have a lot of wisdom to teach too, but don't like, but like be like really open with like how should I approach, how should I be here. So like I just want to do a big shout out to 1,000 grandmothers, because like every time we go to do an action we're really tired, maybe like I have an IEP, so I struggle in school a little, and so we're like juggling work, we're juggling school, we're juggling so many injustices, and then when we come to the actions we have like food from the Thousand Grandmothers, and like all the support. They like hold the banners. They're always there for us. So that's something you can always do. Like just show up and bring all you got. So yeah.
That's kind of like the role they play is kind of like helping young people get over that bridge, right? Because you can't build a bridge if you don't have energy to do it. And so part of it, I think, is they're helping us, get to that other side. Did everybody leave the group or is that just my camera? Okay.
And like adding on to that, like so like you can also be there to help out, just to take over if somebody gets like tired. That's why we always have so many chant leaders. His voice goes out. We got Anaya on standby, ready to pick it right back up. And when her voice goes out, they got me. And when my voice goes out, we cycle it back because we're always on standby for one another, trying to help each other out.
I also want to add a little bit to what Magdalena was saying, because I feel like it also goes back to like the question about what adults can do to support youth. And I feel like just keeping in mind that like all of the youth in this movement are all still students. We're all still athletes. We're all still, we're all still going through like our teenager, our like young emotions. We still go through things. We still have like our family and just like a lot of things going on in our lives. So I feel like it's really important that when you're looking at youth that are in this movement, that are, you know, the people that are like driving this movement, you remember that they're not just climate justice activists, and that like in order to be there as an adult, you have to keep in mind that there's like all of these other things going on in their life. So like how Magdalena and Hannah were talking about, like there's other ways you can be there and show up and show support. Like one quick example is, I know like we have like a couple connections that YBA has, because there's other adults that have reached out to us and they're like, oh, do you need help with like facilitation trainings, or with like I can offer like an improv workshop and things like that, like small things like that are going to help. Like it doesn't always have to be like what you think it is. It's like it can be like really anything that you have to offer as an adult.
And to circle back to the question, I think that ways that we make bridges within YVA, I know like during quarantine, like we were just having meetings on Zoom every Wednesday, 2 hours. And I feel like during that time, we really got to just like have these vulnerable discussions about like what climate justice looks like to us. Because I think in general in 2020, a lot of things happened. And it was just a space for us to process because, as organizers, we sort of like have to make the space where we're like, actually taking action against these things that are happening. But I feel like we get such little time to actually process what's going on and to like feel whatever that we need to feel. And I feel like with YVA we make that space for our youth because like it's such an important thing because like Elizabeth is saying, we're still like people, like I'm still in high school. I have a lot of other roles outside of YVA, while also balancing my role within YVA. And I think in general with organizing, with the role that I do, I talk to like a lot of other, amazing different orgs and groups and people. So sort of like making those connections and making connections with students and making sure like, they can stay involved, which is what Carolyn and Hannah do. But yeah.
Okay, so we had a bunch of other videos, but we've had different technical issues. So I think we're going to show one more video, which is our most recent music video. And I think, I don't know are you there? Anaya, do you want to introduce it or do you want me to introduce it?
So, okay, sorry, that's a river. But yes, so we're about to watch Where's the Money At, which is one of our recent music videos out of the 3 that we have. It's basically the overall theme that we wanted to cover for the song is targeting power holders and elected officials and asking them like where's the money at, because we see that a lot of, going back to like one of the questions asked earlier about how all of these things intersect is because of the different things and companies and people that are like funding them with their money. And so asking where's the money at is just like sort of holding those power holders accountable and saying like, where's your money? And it's, being put into literally killing frontline communities. And so we also want to show like different communities coming together to sort of like realize that I feel like there's always this thing of like frontline communities blaming each other for different issues that are caused by, you know, these systems of oppression and elected officials. And so just seeing these people, you know, come together and fight against the root cause of the system and the issue, is what something else that the video tries to portray. So yeah, this is a music video produced, directed, and written by all youth within YVA. So yeah, hope y'all enjoy. Thank you for sharing the video. But yes, that is the music video. So, oh my goodness, sorry y'all. This app is taking a toll on my computer. Okay, so a question that we had for this, for the panelists is where and how do you see bridges being built in this video, either in the process of making it or in what it's about?
I'm not sure if it's going to cut us off in 1 minute at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
We had more questions. I think we were all sort of struggling with the technology. But in case it does cut us off, I'm going to put our website into the chat. And I think it's really important to reflect on this question that Anaya raised. We didn't all get a chance to answer about where our bridge is being built, and also where is there like more direct talking. We're all here trying to make this technology work, and we're also literally fighting for a world that these young people can actually survive in growing up. We are in a climate emergency, and it's easy for us to it's hard to bring that up, right? But that's actually what we're fighting for. So I would say bridging is really important, and so is being really strong in your center and being really clear about what we're doing here. So I think Lisbeth, maybe we should just go to the closing question. I don't know if it's going to cut us off or what's going to happen, but I feel like Anaya, are you cool with that if we move on to the closing? Sounds good. Okay, go ahead, Lisbeth.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So we also wanted to connect a lot of what we were talking about to this quote from Audre Lorde that says, "The master's tool will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change." So from this quote, I wanted to ask the question, do you agree or disagree with this statement? And if you think the master's tools are not going to cut it, what other tools for organizing do you use in YBA or in your life? And would anyone like to answer that first?
I don't think the tools will cut it because the tools are designed for certain people to be, oppressed and for the climate crisis to keep accelerating at a horrible rate. So I feel like we can't have real solutions until we tear it all down, and we can't just keep using the same old methods because that obviously is not working.
Yeah, so I guess as we're closing out, because I know it's the official end time of our panel, but what do you want to see people attending this panel leave with? What do you guys want if we're not going to be using these same old tools? What tools are we going to use in this moment of crisis? What do you guys see as the most important things that that people watching can do?
I wanna. Sorry, was someone talking?
No, go.
I was just gonna say I want to connect this to something Anaya was talking about earlier about how dismantling all of these systems of oppression and rebuilding a completely new one where we can be the ones that rebuild it, all of the actual people. So I do agree with the statement, and I think some of the things needed are genuine, actual change, from our leaders, our governor, our senators, our even our local leaders, here in our cities. It doesn't have to be I mean, it does have to be, but it doesn't mean you have to start with global leaders, because really the people who are our leaders aren't actually doing their job at protecting us. But I think that's one of the places where it starts. They're really the ones that have the power to make changes that are going to have global impacts.
For sure, I agree. I also think unity, resilience, and resistance are like very, very important things because like also just looking at the root of the issue because like we can't have social justice without climate justice and vice versa, and so just really looking at the root of the issue and always checking your privilege, what you don't have and when you do have, and seeing where you stand, because that will be necessary in order for us to make space for others and to like work outside of the systems that have been put in place to make sure that certain communities prosper while others don't and get oppressed. So just recognizing, where you are and how whatever systems impact your life and influence your life is really key, because that is part of the issue that started the climate crisis. But yeah.
I think we're supposed to be closing up. Is there any final comments from our panelists or questions that people want to put in the chat?
Thank you so much for listening. I want to shout out the session that we're having on October 29th. Please, if you can, we're going to be in San Francisco at Black Rock. You can find more information about it on our website and our social media put in the chat. But I hope to see all of y'all. I don't want to take up too much time. But yeah, please come to that October 29th, Black Rock, 10:30.
Yeah, thank you for shouting that out. And like, yeah, my experience as an adult is like, we're all needed. So if you're an adult watching this, or if you're a young person watching this, come out. Like, they're not trying to be here to just be like, look at us, we're cool youth, we got this climate problem solved. No, like, we need everyone. So please use everything in your power to address this issue that these young people are trying to take on. That means if you can come to the strike, come to the strike. If you can support in other ways, do that. It's like, we need all of us to deal with this. So please get involved beyond watching this panel, and I'm sure many of you already are, so thank you for that. I don't really have any idea how we end this or what happens next.
I know how we end this. All right, we really appreciate you guys coming. We appreciate our amazing and beautiful and wonderful panel members. But that's enough about me. But I really was excited to be a part of this panel. I'm glad I got to do it with the people I consider my family. So thank you guys.
Bye.
Thank you guys. I don't know if this platform, y'all.
I think we leave it. I think there's other sessions that people are going to.
Okay, y'all. We're trying to figure this out, but please make it to the other sessions.
But if you guys, if you people watching, either you could leave, or if you have a question, if you want to say that, you can put it in the chat. Thank you all. I don't even know who's watching.
There's 18 people.
What's everybody already left?
Thanks, guys, gals, peeps.
Thank you. Bye. So should I say leave? Anaya, should we leave?
I guess.
I don't even know. I think this is a mic drop moment. I think.
Everyone else leave. If you guys want to talk to us, we're here. We just can't see you. You can put stuff in the chat.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, Magdalena. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we leave.
There's still 8 people here. I don't know if they will. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, if anyone is asking us anything else, put in the chat. But I'm so confused because I'm just gonna, I guess, leave and then.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.